Our first storyteller this evening is Joan Prittie. And I'm sure many of you know Joan. She's usually talking about domestic violence and asking people for money to eliminate domestic violence. And I'm just here to tell you she will be doing neither of those things tonight. Joan Prittie.
Are we up high enough? Mama told me never to slouch.
Better?
Are we good?
I think so.
All right. When I was in my early teens, Jesus asked me to sit with him in the back of a tour bus. We had been on the road for over a week already in a production that took almost a year to put together, and that moment should have been the highlight of that year. For most girls that I knew, it was the kind of moment that they would replay, savor, and share with friends in endless phone conversations in the weeks and months that followed. It turns out I wasn't like most girls that I knew. See, in the large suburban church where I was raised, the center of social life for hundreds of teens was the youth group. And the center of the youth group was the nationally touring youth choir and Christian rock band. And at the center of the center stood the lead guitarist, who was a senior that year. He was absolutely gorgeous, talented and charismatic. He wore flip-flops, even in cold weather, which in our conservative community made him edgy and nonconformist. He wrote poetry as well as music. This made him sensitive and romantic. On coffee house night in the fellowship hall, he sang Roxanne. And when leaders said that a song about putting on the red light was not appropriate to the occasion, he sang Don't Stand So Close to Me about a teacher's affair with a student. This made him rebellious. He was a bad boy, but in a totally safe way. He was the undisputed king of the youth group and the object of unbridled passion on the part of just about every girl in it. So it was no surprise after auditions were held when he won the role of Jesus in our touring production of Godspell. I was thrilled to have a part in the chorus, a tiny speaking role, and to be traveling over the summer with all of the older cool kids. The tour itself, at this point, is kind of a blur. We had a show just about every night. There was a different city pretty much every day. There was a whirlwind day in New York, but mainly what I remember all took place on the tour bus. It was like the whole school year compressed into a few weeks. Cliques formed and divided and dissolved, and boys and girls fell in love and broke up, all in less time than it took to drive across Pennsylvania. And while my friends and I were happy to squeeze 3 girls into coach seats that were designed for 2 people, Jesus, who always hung out in the back of the bus with the band, Jesus had the last row to himself. Now, this gave him room to pull out his guitar for sing-alongs during long stretches of driving, but it also made it possible for him to bring a girl back, different one every 4 or 5 days, to talk and make out in the Methodist teenage version of a rock star bringing a groupie up to his hotel room after the show. So one day, Jesus came to my row. And as we talked, he looked soulfully into my eyes, after a while caressing the back of my hand with his. And for the first time, I felt the full power of his charisma. It was like I was the only girl on the bus, the only girl in the world. Eventually, he cocked his head toward the back of the bus, leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Want to come sit with me?" This was the moment, the potentially epic moment. And in retrospect, I should have seen it coming, right? But I didn't. I had no clue, and I could not believe that he had picked me. My heart was pounding. I knew what would happen if I said yes, if I took his hand, if we went past my friends, past the band, all the way to the back of the bus. I closed my eyes just for a split second, but I could imagine everything. I pictured the envy of all the other girls. I pictured my new-found social status when school started in the fall. I pictured making out with God spelled Jesus. I don't think so, I said, but thanks. He kept looking at me, but it wasn't soulfully anymore. He was blinking his eyes rapidly, as though he were trying to process this unprecedented reaction. He recovered, though, said it was cool, and ambled casually back to his seat, and I stayed tight-lipped about the encounter, my adolescent logic being that it was better to be thought of as one of the many girls who didn't really stand a chance than to be known as the one girl. So weird that she said no to Jesus. At the end of the summer, Jesus went off to college, and honestly, I didn't think about him for about 10 years. Not until I came out. Especially growing up in the church, these days I count it a blessing that I did not become fully aware of my sexual orientation until I was mature enough to accept it without much angst or drama. But at the time, as it was dawning on me in the wake of yet another doomed relationship with a perfectly nice guy, at the time, I felt like I was arriving awfully late to the party. I remember ranting about it. Dear Lord, why didn't you show me the way sooner? I could have been with girls the last decade. And no sooner had I said the words than I heard a voice, just as clear as if someone were standing right next to me. Well, God spelled Jesus did ask you to sit with him in the back of the tour bus, and you turned him down. Now, just how big of a sign were you expecting? So, my first tour with the youth choir and Christian rock band is not only a memory of my almost epic teen moment, but it is the subject of my longest running joke with God. And the joke goes like this. Dear Lord, I'm yours. Use me however you will. But Heavenly Father, if there is ever anything you need me to know about or do in a timely way, I'm going to need you to make the sign more obvious than Jesus in the back of the tour bus. Thank you.